What's up, everybody? This is Albert. He, him, his pronouns, and we're back with another video for this project that I plan to do called Raising Souls, which is a reading list to enhance political education, further Black radical tradition, and raise consciousness about the world we live in. And for this one, we're going to be talking about Bell Hooks' All About Love. Bell Hooks, for those who don't know, she's a cultural critic and a theorist. Like Angela Davis, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Michelle Alexander, she was also in the academic field. And she's a renowned public intellectual. There are a lot of documentaries that she does that involve pop culture and white supremacist, cis hetero patriarchy, capitalism, and stuff like that. So, All About Love, it was released 2001, but a lot of things that she said is relevant to today as people don't know what love is and how do we didn't even think about how to conceptualize it. So, really recommend this book because it's this one. It doesn't talk about the criminal justice system compared to everything else in racial history, but it focuses on love ethics. Is more talking about how how do we adopt an ideology of love. What does love look like to people, and what is society's definition of love. And we can get started here, and this might be parts as well. It's a lot of information, but it's a good quick read, to be honest, because it's not that the chapters, they're very short compared to like Alexander and stuff like that. But before we get to the chapters, the preface and introduction are very important. The preface pretty much introduces why do we value love, and that love makes life more meaningful. It makes us feel things. It makes us do, influences our decisions. Um, if we don't know how to love, how can we love? And how do we know that we're being loved? And she talks about when a baby is born. That can be a first introduction of love because someone gave agency to that child as they grow up and become a kid, a teen, an adult. And that's an aspect of love. It's not fully love, but you can understand that it contributes to growth and development, and the legacy we leave behind once we're out of this world. And the introduction, she talks about her experience when I think she was going to Columbia, and she saw this graffiti art when she was about to go to her job as a professor. And this graffiti said, "The search for love continues even in the face of great odds." And it shows that love is a mystery, and we always search for love even if we don't know that we're searching for love. We always want someone to value us, to see us, to feel us, and validate us. And she and the next day the graffiti art disappeared because it was in the construction part, so the art was gone. But she was able to find the artist. I don't know how she found the artist, but it was in a it was in a rough part of New York that she was in, and that art gave that artist something to live for. It was how they expressed their affection, how they expressed love. And Belle find that very powerful. And she talks about how society, how we're socialized to um react to love. And she said, cynicism is the great mask of the disappointed and betrayed heart. So, say someone harms us, say someone violate us. How do they know what love is? Do they have a full understanding of what love is? Because if they understood love, they will understand how their harm has affected you, and they would have truly cared. But since they probably never have a full understanding of love, they were not able to hold themselves accountable and actually interrogate the action that they caused to cause harm. What gave them the leverage to commit harm, and why we don't have an infrastructure for them to not do that harm in the first place, and how to prevent future harm. And she talks about youth and popular culture's discourse on love. So she was talking about how we live in a society that is so individual based, and we don't think about our neighbors, our next door neighbors, our family, the people who are unsung heroes in love. And I think she was interviewing Lil Kim at when she was young, and she raps about, she has this braggadocious type of rap, but she doesn't have a lot of love songs. I think was Bell Hooks questioning what is love, and Lil Kim thinks love is a waste of time or something, and Bell Hooks is that challenged her to interrogate um, our societal definition of love and what is love. And she talks about these gender dynamics and gender takes on love, and I highlighted this on this, so let me get to this. It's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And she talked about how men and women love is socialized differently on the base of gender. And she said, all my life, I have thought of love as primarily a topic women contemplate with greater intensity and vigor than anybody else on the planet. I still hold this belief, even though visionary female thinking on the subject has yet to be taken as seriously as the thoughts and writings of men. So she talks about how women, they have a more of a realistic interpretation and articulation of love. and she talks about romance novels and stuff like that. And men theorize about love, but women are more often love's practitioners. Most men feel that they receive love and therefore know what it feels like to be loved. Women often feel we are in a constant state of yearning, wanting love, but not receiving it. So, thinking about this patriarchal notion of what a husband and wife should be doing, a husband provides the breadwinner and all that stuff because of society's empowerments for men, the privilege that men get in patriarchy, and women, they don't get the chance to be loved in their household. They don't get the chance to be appreciated. It's just, I give you money. That's all I can give you, but no love. So that's a traditional patriarchal notion of gender roles and stuff like that, and how that can be damaging. And she talked about the patriarchal effects of love. And she talked about how patriarchy also hurts men, and how we talk about love. And Yeah, she said, reviewing the literature on love, I noticed how few writers, male or female, talk about the impact of patriarchy and way in which male domination of women and children stands in the way of love. And talks about how women are socialized to be the caregivers, the nourishers and stuff like that. And men, all they do is provide. There's like nothing else. There's no emotional work. And patriarchy makes them have this lack of ability to interrogate that, and makes you think about marriages like back in the day. Like, women didn't have financial and economic security to have power and say so in their household compared to men, because men always get the jobs. Men were the first to get the right to vote. Men took over public office. Men get paid more higher than women. So it puts women in a subjective place and subordinate position. And she also talks about love's effect on our decisions in life, and how we do things because we love to do, say a career path. Because I enjoy writing, thinking about consider career in journalism or writing. We do things out of love and don't even think about other people's desires and wants and needs. And we should challenge our notions and ideals of love. So chapter 1, she it's called Clarity and Give Love Words. And she talks about how people say they love you and they have a funny way of showing it. And we don't really give a definition to love. And some people confuse love with affection, say like a romantic relationship or a platonic relationship. And she says affection is only an ingredient of love, but their love has all these pillars. So there's affection, care, recognition, respect, commitment, and trust. And all of those are the big things that make up love. And yeah, love is not a one-way street. There's no singular definition of love. People have their own theories about it, but these give you like a full understanding and let you know that you were loved, and you know how to love. And this is going to be a very tense topic. And she said on that love and abuse cannot coexist. So if you know how to, if you understand love, you have to also understand abuse, because abuse is fueled by hatred, and abuse is not love. And we have to challenge and make sure we understand abuse in the face of love. And she talks about her family and how she how she talks about love in this book. She wasn't loved by her family, that they probably didn't know how to love, but she was cared for. Like, she got a roof on top of her head, she got food on her plate, clothes on her back, and stuff like that. But that's just care. She didn't have like the other ingredients. She didn't give affection, recognition, respect, commitment, and trust. And she don't sees this as her family being dysfunctional. People have their own dysfunctions. I think she thinks that all families, we have all our dysfunctions. We have our generational curses. And then she said, a lack of sustained love does not mean the absence of care, affection, or pleasure. And then she gave her own definition of love. So she said, love is the will to extend one's self for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. So it's all about connectedness and connectedness within ourselves and others, and how we contribute to the growth and development of as a community and as human beings, which I think is a powerful thing to conceptualize. And I let me see. I don't know if she said that's how she defined love, or that was a reference, because she referenced like a lot of dissertations, novels, and theses that talks about love. Like she mentioned The Art of Loving by this author, and she talked about romance novels that a lot of women talk about. And yeah, I think it was her definition of love, which I think is a valid and understandable critical component of life. And she said, many of us choose relationships of affection and care that will never become loving because they feel safer. So think about your friendships and relationships with your family members. Is that out of love, or is it based in protection and blood and stuff like that? Because just because you're blood related to your family don't mean that they love you. And just because you're in a relationship with another person, they might not be your real friend. People we have these friendships, and who knows how long they last. We learn about them and we learn about ourselves, and we think about, is there a reciprocity issue when it comes to the relationship? And if that's the issue, then we can't be friends. But we can also work to make that friendship better, and we can have a more sustainable and loving relationship, and that's love. But if you just have a relationship for the sake of a relationship and you're not going to hold me accountable, then you're not contributing to my growth. You're doing more damage than you think you are. You don't want me to grow. And she said men and women were insisted to have different love languages, therefore love is lacking. So, talking about gender socializations of love and how men and women viewed love differently. Do y'all view love as just solely security? Y'all view love solely on providing material conditions to have sustainable life? But what about emotional growth? What about spiritual growth? What about sexual health? What about intellectual health? Because there's more than, it's all these types of well-beings that we don't consider. I learned this in wellness and diverse society in my school, and it was like emotional well-being, physical well-being, environmental well-being. Like, it's all encompassing, and I think that's wonderful. And chapter 2 is called Justice and Childhood Love Lessons. And she talks about how people during their childhood, how she talked a lot about how people view discipline. So I know there's this argument going around, how do we teach our children discipline? And some people see punishments as a way of disciplining them, and they think children are actually learning. But how is the behaviors in the future going to be prevented if that child didn't learn from their mistakes and stuff like that? So say the child broke a vase or something, some adults would spank the child, and they call that as punishment and discipline. But the adult there could have been an alternative to just make the child clean up the vase or something like that. Make that child appreciate the vase and stuff like that. So that can be another way to see discipline, not just whippings or something like that. And that's kind of what Bell's point is: make the child learn from a harm or a mistake or a wrongdoing rather than punishing them, because children, they just got into this earth. They don't know how things work yet, and adults and parents should provide guidance so they can be a better human and functional human being in the future and when they grow up. And she talks about how there's this notion that love is about getting what one wants. And it is a way of thinking about love that makes it difficult for children to acquire a deeper emotional understanding. So, if that child learns how to clean a vase, they're going to learn how to clean vases that might be broken in the future and stuff like that, for example. And she was talking about how she was in this conference, and she was with parents, and parents were all talking about how young people are spoiled or something like that, but that we shouldn't be coddling them. But people don't understand coddling. They don't see that children are they don't know how to learn from circumstances and find that their actions have consequences yet. And Bell Hooks was kind of like the only advocate for children. She calls that we don't talk about homeless children, like like there are children that are literally, childhood hunger is literally a thing in the United States right now, and you think the younger generation are spoiled. And she's talking, and then she talked about, to demystify the meaning of love, the art and practice of loving, we need to use sound definitions of love when talking with children, and we also need to ensure that loving action is never tainted with abuse. And so that goes in far with her argument that love and abuse cannot coexist. And we need to learn to not be carceral and prison like with our actions, because you're just reacting to a prized possession that you worked hard on, but you need to work on measures to make sure that circumstance won't ever happen again, and how you can learn from that circumstance. And then she talked about an example of allowances. So I know a lot of parents, they're not able to afford to give children allowances. So for chores, like some families, for children, chores are given, like they're expected to also take care of the household. But it can also be a teachable moment for the children, make them learn out of the work that they do. Like she she had this conversation with her goddaughter because her mother didn't give her an allowance for some chore or something. But it's just the fact that the goddaughter, she's young, she couldn't afford a job, she couldn't make the qualifications to have a job. Give her some stepping stones to how to do the workforce and stuff like that. So an allowance can be an incentive. And I know when I was younger, my parents they give me money for getting good grades and stuff like that, and it became a motivating drive for me. So it's becoming to the point where I got so many good grades that my parents were like, if you want something, we'll pay for it and stuff like at that point. And think about scholarships and college scholarships, because great, you get money for good grades and stuff like that, and people don't think of things like that. And chapter 3, Hooks talks about honesty, be true to love, and she talks about the power of lying. So it also goes with the trust component that she says that love should be consisted with. And she said people have their all sorts of reasons to lie for protective reasons, lying to avoid conflict or spare people's feelings. And she talks about the truth hurts. Like, the truth can literally hurt. Like, imagine telling someone that they have cancer, that they have a few days to live, or something like that. And who knows, if they take the proper medication, they probably would have better chance of living and stuff like that. And it can damage a person's psyche when the truth is actually exposed to them. But it hurts harder when you're being lied to and a secret could be kept from you that involves you. And she talks about the power of lying and how it's a patriarchal notion to get away with things. So thinking about uh if a man cheats on a woman or something like that, like and probably like back in the day when no social media, it was probably easy. It was probably easier to keep secrets because there's no social media to expose you and stuff like that. Like, we're not in an era of connectedness as we were back then, but it can be easier to get away with things. So that can be an example of what Hooks is trying to say. And winning prizes, winning a court case because of corruptive reasons. Like, the rich are being rich because they're hoarding wealth, and they lie to other people that they actually earned it, when in reality they inherited that wealth. AKA Jeff Bezos, about to be a trillionaire, but he got $100,000 loan to start Amazon in his suburban garage, and a lot of people didn't have access to that wealth. So that can be another example of what Hooks is trying to get at. And she talks about this appeal of masculinity. Like, men, there's this idea of proving ourselves, to assert ourselves, assert domination, because of hypermasculinity. And and you get your masculinity points by how many women you sleep with or something like that. And that can be an example. It's it's all about power. That's what pretty much the basis of it is. And she also talked about how men get accepted because of unethical actions that they committed. And there's this good quote that I saw on one page, and let me get to that real quick. Sorry, y'all. It was on page 39. It was the last paragraph, and right now I'm on chapter almost there, and here I am on the page. So she said, regardless of the intensity of the male masquerade, inwardly many men see themselves as the victims of lovelessness. Like everyone, they learned as children to believe that love would be present in their lives. Although so many boys are taught to behave as though love does not matter, in their hearts they yearn for it. So deep down, even though patriarchy tells us we don't need love to have power and to be believed and seen and validated, you need love. You're always going to be yearning for it. And what if you don't know what love is, and how you've probably never been exposed to love? And because of patriarchy, lovelessness prevails. And that yearning does not go away simply because they become men. Lying as one form of acting out is a way they articulate ongoing rage at the failure of love's promise. To embrace patriarchy, they must actively surrender the longing to love. So lovelessness powers all these systems of oppression. It fuels racism, it fuels patriarchy, It fuels classism, elitism, heterosexism, cissexism, ableism, fatphobia, all of the isms, the hierarchy that the system empowers. And it's another paragraph, and it's not far after. And she said, allegiance to male domination requires of men who embrace this thinking, and many, if not most, do, that they maintain dominance over women by any means necessary. While much cultural attention is given to domestic violence and practically everyone agrees it is wrong for men to hit women as a way of subordinating us, most men use psychological terrorism as a way to subordinate women. So it's easy to define physical violence, but we don't think about emotional, financial, sexual, or other violences that are not physical, and that can be even more dangerous than the physical violence because people is not easily detectable compared to physical violence. And lying is one of the most powerful weapons in this arsenal. When men lie to women, presenting a false self, the terrible price they pay to maintain power over us is the loss of their capacity to give and receive love. Trust is the foundation of intimacy. When lies erode trust, genuine connection cannot take place. While men who dominate others can and do experience ongoing care, they place a barrier between themselves and the experience of love. So think about it. When we talk about initiation into romance, it tends to be men that are the catcher, the hunters, the predators, and women are the catch and the target. So think about that power dynamic and how it can be problematic. And and usually when men initiate to women, they try their best selves. They present themselves to the women's ideals and their standards. And there has to be a mutual connection. Like if the woman doesn't love you back, go back, homie. And that just because y'all see an interest then, that doesn't mean you'll have that same interest years to come as you learn about each other. So that's also something to tackle. And then she talks about women, so and how they can enforce misogyny and patriarchy to their benefit. And women's reasons to lie. She talked about Adam and Eve, which can be because Eve ate the fruit or something and betrayed God, and how some white supremacist Christians use that to enforce misogyny. Some black preachers do. They enforce that to say that wives submit to your husbands and stuff like that, and listen to your husband and stuff. Yeah. And then women, they can lie for security purposes. So say they lied about getting pregnant to keep the guy and stuff like that, because that happens. But and they can and women, they know emotional intelligence, so some women also have the power to manipulate to their advantage, giving psychological Olympics. And that can also be because of patriarchy's enforce, and that internalizes patriarchy that women can were socialized to do sometimes. And then she talks about the differences between privacy and secrecy, which is so important to distinguish. And privacy is intimate and confidential information that a lot of people, they're probably never going to share, and if they will share, they will give permission. But secrecy is when it involves other parties, and it can be in a detriment if they don't know, and it sometimes is to a benefit. So say stimulus checks, how Congress have all this money to fund police departments, but they don't have enough money to all of a sudden they don't have enough money to provide stimulus packages and PPE during COVID-19 and stuff like that. And that's corruption. And she talked about when she was when she was in a relationship with this man, and how that boyfriend's sister told Belle that someone in the family is a product of incest, and it probably was a boyfriend. But uh, that's a certain information that a lot of people might not be ready for. You need to be in a space and mindset to internalize and consume that information, especially something like that. And then she talked about the normalization of lying and how mass media is an example of that. So say like the drug war, how the war on drugs, um, there's this propaganda that is tends to be black inner city drug drug people that are the crisis in America, when it really is people don't know how to rehabilitate, and the government's complicity in fueling racism and classism into the criminal justice system, and how that fuels mass incarceration. So that can be a normalization of lying. And then there's this other paragraph which is very profound. It was on page 48. She said, to know love, we have to tell the truth to ourselves and to others. So you can lie to yourself, which is the so much powerful in lying. You don't even realize that you're lying to yourself sometimes. Like, am I really feeling for that person, even though they did all this stuff to me? They hurt me. Do they really do I really love this person? And you lie to yourself that you really do love them, and you don't even realize it sometimes. And she also said, creating a false self to mask fears and insecurities has become so common that many of us forget who we are and what we feel underneath the pretense. Breaking through this denial is always the first step in uncovering our longing to be honest and clear. Lies and secrets burden us and cause stress. When an individual has always lied, he has no awareness that truth-telling can take away this heavy burden. To know this, he must let the lies go. So the truth will set us free. It will acknowledge the wounds, and it provides surgery. And lies provide band-aids, but truth gives the surgery. It actually gives us the healing and the repairment that we for the damage that has been caused. And she said lies may make people feel better, but they do not help them to know love. And that's how we navigate through life. We want love and we want to show love. And then there's chapter 4, which is commitment, and the title is Let Love Be Love in Me. So she talks about self-love, which is very important. So if you don't love yourself, you don't know how to love others. So if you talk about your goals, you have to learn to appreciate others' goals, for example. And then she talks about how self-love can heighten our self-esteem. You have to believe in yourself. That's love. And we also have to learn how to accept ourselves. We have to be self-responsible and self-assertive. And those are the pillars of self-esteem. So accept our talents, our identities. So accept that I'm black and I'm a human and I should be treated with dignity and respect, for example. Self-responsibility, hold yourself accountable to your actions. So acknowledge when you're done harm. Your influence is all over the world. You have to hold yourself accountable to everything that you do. Say you're doing a project, you have to hold yourself accountable to the completion of that project and do an assessment and how you can do other projects and how you can make that thing better, that imperfection of that project better. And self-assertiveness, and know that you deserve protection, you deserve community, you deserve love. And she talked about living purposely, which is which is important. So talks about the work you do. Like my dad is a mailman, and he I think what gives him purpose is that he's serving the community, the neighbors that get the mail and stuff like that. If it wasn't for him doing the job, they would not have been informed. And his the neighborhoods, they appreciate him doing his job and stuff like that, because someone has to do that, but you also deserve appreciation for the work you do. And you also have to live unapologetically. You have to live in your truth, because if you don't do that, you're gonna always gonna be suppressing yourself, and that's gonna do more hurt. It's gonna give opportunity for more hurt, and that's gonna be and it's a journey. And she talked about lively households and domestic bliss. So she talked about practice love as a practice, even in your most intimate relationships. So how you can practice love to your parents, your siblings, and your community, not even just the people in your household. So your next door neighbor, your family members that live in another neighborhood and stuff like that. And she also wants us to remember to not confuse self-love with selfishness. So self-love is not narcissism. Self-love gives yourself time to appreciate your humanity. But selfishness is literally, it's an imbalance of power within it. So like it's narcissism and centeredness, and thinks the world revolves around you, when there's a, and it fuels this idea that we need to be on our, we're you're the only person who got yourself, but it gives you it makes you not want to get help from others, because it's important to have mutual aid and stuff like that. And she said, do not expect to receive the love from someone else you did not give yourself. So think of a romantic relationship or something like that. If you don't love yourself, you're willing to accept anything that isn't really love. So domestic violence, for instance, it can put you in this trap, and you don't even realize that. And it's not to blame yourself, but it tells you about the environment you live in. Why didn't you have the infrastructure to point things out sooner? How you weren't able to identify the signs? And it's education really is the foundation of power. What Nelson Mandela said. And that leads into chapter 5, which is spirituality, which is divine love, which is a very good chapter. Let me get to it real quick. I'll get to it, but I it's like I had some paragraphs and stuff like that on that page that I think was pretty important. But she talks about how spirituality versus money and power, and how spirituality has been used to prove a point, in money and power. How think America, for instance, how we live in a Judeo-Christian supremacist country that's also racist, sexist, heterosexist, ableist, cissexist, and stuff like that. And it literally juxtaposes and contradicts the original ideas, teachings and values that was the true spirituality, and how colonialism, imperialism, and how that was justified through spirituality and religion. And she talked about how she critiqued organized religion, and how it fuels individualism, like classism, for instance, how there's this idea that poverty is a mindset when literally children can be born into wealth and children can be born into poverty, and children did not have the power, they didn't have the mindset um, to be in those positions that they're in. We should think about communities and future generations, and how organized religion as we know today, there are a lot of contradictions to it. And I think that's why a lot of people, they don't see solace in the church as it used to be. And we need to go back to the roots of love that we probably never been exposed to. And she said, loving practice is not aimed at simply giving an individual greater life satisfaction. It is extolled as the primary way we end domination and oppression. So that's not love when you're preaching poverty is a mindset. Love is how we care for one another in whenever disaster strikes and stuff like that. So, like, for example, hurricanes and natural disasters, we have to be prepared for those things, because if we're not prepared for those things, it'll damage the community. And if a community is damaged, all of us are damaged. Because we also have to think about empathy. We have to think of ourselves in other positions, because we could have been in those positions. And it's a very good quote. Let me get to it. It's on page 77 of the book. And I'm probably going to do parts again for this one, because this is a really good book. You'll learn a lot of things. You'll be a different person when you read this book. Okay, I'm on the chapter, and I'm almost on page 77. Yeah, it's this paragraph. Spiritual life is first and foremost about commitment to a way of thinking and behaving that honors principles of interbeing and interconnectedness. When I speak of the spiritual, I refer to the recognition within everyone that there is a place of mystery in our lives where forces that are beyond human desire or will alter circumstances or guide and direct us. I call these forces divine spirit. And this divine spirit, a lot of people have these different interpretations. I see it as God because I'm a Christian. Some people see it as Allah. Someone see it as Yahweh, Jesus, whatever you call your deity, or polytheism. Because there's some people believe in multiple gods. Some people believe God is a woman. Some people believe God is non-binary. And I think it's beautiful that we have all these theories about it for how we interpret love. And when we choose to lead a spirit-filled life, we recognize and celebrate the presence of transcendent spirits. Some people call this present soul God, the beloved, higher consciousness, or higher power. And some people in astrology, I know, they call it the universe. Still others say that this force is what it is because it cannot be named. To them, it is simply the spirit moving in us and through us. So we have to see God within ourselves and God in others and practice God. And I think that's beautiful. And she talked about knowing love, or the hope of knowing love is the anchor that keeps us from falling into that sea of despair. So think about depression and how it can lead to suicide or something like that. Some people did not have a guidance to love, and that and suicide or depression can be that sea of despair that they eventually succumb to. And it's unfortunate, but it should allow us to know where we can fill these gaps, and how do we fix circumstances so future suicide rates don't have to be as high or stagnant. It can decrease and people don't have to commit suicide. And she referenced the book of John in the Bible a lot. And in this specific verse, it's anyone who does not know love is still in death. And she talks about a chapter about death, which is very poignant. But she talks about, and it shows us that love gives us meaning to life. It gives us reason to continue living, and we have to go back to the teachings and the morals and the values that were that existed. And then chapter 6 is values, so living by a love ethic. So this chapter, she talks about how love can be a politic, and how different political ideologies, they contradict with love. And she talked about the awakening to love can happen only as we let go of our obsession with power and domination. So if you're only thinking about yourself, you're not really thinking about love. You're not thinking about, if you're not thinking about others, you're not thinking about love. You're thinking about power and domination and individualism, and society fuels on that, but not everyone can win in that game, and not everyone is going to benefit in the long run. And and she didn't call it radical compassion, but she was talking about the importance of radical compassion. And she talked about mutual aids and stuff like that. And I never thought about it beforehand, how radical it was for my mom to ask our neighbor who has a daycare to help take care of me when I come home from school or something like that. That is a form of mutual aid, because my mom cares for me. She loves me, and that neighbor loves me and cares for the community. So we have to think of love in those aspects. And fulfilling careers, so actually doing something that you love to do, and that's radical compassion. And she Hooks understood that not everyone were able to do things that they were loved. Not all of us were dreamed of what we always dreamed of doing. Like Toni Morrison, she didn't become the person that we know today until I think she was almost 30 when she published I forgot what was first, The Bluest Eye or Beloved, but she published her debut novel and got Pulitzer Prize. I think it was Beloved. And if she didn't continue a love politic, she wouldn't have become the most influential, this much of a powerhouse and influence that she has become, and of the legacy that she left behind, if she didn't follow her love politic. And then she talking about fear and moving in fear through the status quo. So fear, we always have this fear, so that way we conform to these standards, because we think it guides us to acceptance and love, when that isn't always the case. You have to take in this fear that propels you to go to the status quo. That means you have a lack of faith, that you don't have. You have to envision. You have to provide yourself these envisions to have a better society. And if you're letting the status quo attack your vision, you're losing your faith. So you have to. It's important to dream big and be forward thinking and be radical to get to the root of, and that's important. And then she talks about love helps us gain hope, awareness, and understanding. So I was in this organization in school called Towson Freedom School, because I love learning about how we interact in society, and why these systems of oppression, people don't point them out. And Freedom School was able to enhance my knowledge and stuff like that. But it gives me connections to people in Baltimore, the mutual aid that we have to deliver groceries to people that were affected by the pandemic and stuff like that. And it gives us hope. It gives us meaning to life because we're serving our communities, and it makes us understand how important our action is. So it gives awareness that these systems don't have to exist. And then Hoods had a critique of violent portrayals in media compared to love scenes, and how she talked about like sex scenes and how we talk about sex, and how it's more of a power dynamic in sex scenes and love scenes, but we don't get into like the intimate aspects, like what gives us the pleasure that we always wanted when we're committing sexual acts. How movies don't really portray that compared to the brutality, the violence, and the gore and the justifications of violent scenes. Excuse me. And she talks about how violence is so sensationalized, and the media is to blame for it. Video games and stuff like that. We have a culture of violence, and it's out of hatred, racism and stuff like that. Like we have this addiction to violence. Like think for example, the videotape of Rodney King being beaten, Emmett Till's picture when he got chopped off, trigger warning for racial violence and trauma and stuff like that. Sorry, but thinking about the videos of police killing black people, how that circulates in social media, and how we become so desensitized to violence that it shouldn't have to take visual imagery to make us understand the gravity and the intensity then, and how stupid these institutions we have. It should radicalize us. It should motivate us to not make these things happen. We know they exist. We know we shouldn't have to see it. And then she talked about the importance of people power, and she talked about the power of people as consumers to protest. So we live in a consumerist society. So think about Amazon or stuff like that. Like Amazon is popping right now. People are buying all these anti-racist books and Amazon, but don't think about the Amazon workers that have to perform in massive production levels to provide the service that you give. And it's important that we have all these strikes and stuff like that in order to protest the injustices that Amazon, Walmart, other big corporations that fuel on exploitation and violence and dehumanization. And then she said, if all public policy was created in the spirit of love, we would not have to worry about unemployment, homelessness, schools failing to teach children, or addiction. Because like all of these things are criminalized. We criminalize poverty. We criminalize children that act out in school. We criminalize people that have a drug addiction, the war on drugs and stuff like that. But we don't get into the root of why these actions were there in the first place. These punitive policies of hate make more things make more crime happen, but they don't solve the problem that make communities not have to succumb that type of infrastructure and support system, so they won't have to resort to violence. They won't have to resort to addiction and stuff like that. Then she talked about the importance of community. So she didn't call it communism, but I think she's pretty much a communist. But she talked about communalism as a practice that should be advocated for to give us the public policy that marginalized communities and communities in general need, like universal health care, living wages, and stuff like that. And we have to be in a public policy of love in order to make those things happen. And then I'm a stop with this chapter. This is gonna be the last chapter, and then I'm gonna make a part two. And then chapter 7 is greed, simply love. So this one talks about capitalism, consumerism, and individualism, and how materialism and consumption created greed, competition, and lovelessness. Is this me culture, all about me? We are in this lottery, we're in competition. It's if y'all saw the movie Hunger Games, it's literally a battle royale for the last one standing to get that product, to get that business, to get that award, that privilege. And we don't live in a a society that makes the community as a whole better. We should just be given those because we're human beings. And then she talked about imperialism and militarism. So she talked about how the civil rights movement, we were like in a we were about to focus on love through civil rights because of the ideologies that came from civil rights activists such as Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Ella Baker, all that jazz. But then the Vietnam War came because Americans want something from Vietnam, and then it fuels back hatred. We're back into this means of hatred to go through future interactions. And then she talked about how big business and when cravings turn to pleasure. So she talked about the drug industries, the pharmaceutical industries, how they profit off of charging people the most expensive of prices to people that are the common people. And then she talked about, and then she talked, this is a good quote. She said, addiction is both a consequence of widespread lovelessness and a cause. So get into the root of it. So instead of criminalizing addiction, get into the root of that addiction. Is it because of trauma that that person never got healed? Is it because of unemployment? Is it because of peer pressure or something like that? And we have to really tackle our real satisfaction and desires in our relationships, because you can have all the money in the world but you're never satisfied and never have your desires fulfilled. And desire should be seen as communal too. And she critiqued charity and philanthropy, which I like to brought out. There should be no reason why we should have charity and philanthropy with as much money as the United States have. And she talked about how charity can be seen as generosity for the weak. So she sees giving money to a homeless person as that we don't have to do that. It's a choice for us to give money to the poor. Y'all should pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Y'all should do work to earn. And the key is, a lot of people that get wealth, they hoard wealth or inherited that wealth. And is a lot of things that are accumulated, are wealth accumulated, they're not through labor. And for some reason, the rich people put that ideology on people that are common in the power structures and stuff like that. And that's how our policies are functioned. And then she talked about how rich people believe that because they don't want to sacrifice their power, and it's in their interests to and how they think the way life should go, and that needs to be tackled. And then she talked about a generational analysis of material lack and luxury. So how we should move from equality to justice. So the civil rights movement, it was more so equality centered, centered and equality focused, like getting the right to vote and stuff like that, but we don't challenge the systems that contribute to our oppression and put us in these positions that actually do more harm. And she talked about how a lot of people in the civil rights movement, they have a focus on access and professionalism, but they don't talk about class issues or internationalism. They don't talk about imperialism. They will talk about black people's right to fight in Iraq and Vietnam and stuff like that, but they don't talk about how Vietnam was this. All of this is a product of imperialism and neocolonialism. So that's how there's this lack of focus within the civil rights movement. And she said, many of our nation's citizens are afraid to embrace an ethics of compassion because it threatens their security. We feel we're threatened when our privilege is challenged. And they brainwash to believe that they can only be secure if they have more than the next person. They accumulate and still feel insecure because there is always someone who has accumulated more. So a lot of people aspire to be Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and stuff like that. But because those exist, racism and all the other system of oppressions that is fueled by capitalism, they will exist when you become Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos because you benefit from that system, and you're the exception. And then she talked about the Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky sex scandal and how that that was another idea. Like we're talking more about the sex scandal as a means of impeachment for Clinton, but not about the prison industrial complex that he fueled. This emphasis on being tough on crime compared to the sex scandal, because it's all about respectability, and it's just unfortunate. So she talked about the importance of sharing resources, being connected with each other. She talked about interdependency. She also talked about the importance of environmentalism and civic engagement. So recycle, keep our planet protected so our future generations can be in healthy spaces. And civic engagement, make sure you're aware of what our politicians are doing. Some that can be through voting, that can be through protesting, that can be through litigation, that can be through participating in community association meetings, town halls. It's important to get engaged within your community and what your community is facing. And I'm probably gonna stop right there and then make a part 2. And part 2 will be the last one. But stay tuned.